Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Place and Sustainability Overview and Scrutiny panel. I'm Councillor Steve Rippleswain, Chairman. Members, before we start this meeting, I would like to pay tribute to none other than James Carpenter, as this will be his last panel meeting, certainly for this panel anyway, it's not his last panel completely. James has been our Strategic Director of Place Operations and Sustainability for the past 3 years. He will be leaving us in early February to take up a new post as the founding Managing Director of East Devon District Council's new trading company, East Devon Environmental. I would like to place on record my thanks for all his work and assistance in these meetings and in his service to the Council, and I'm sure we wish him well for the future. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chairman.
I will now hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping note.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. Please use your microphone and switch it off once you have finished speaking. Please switch any mobile devices to silent. If the fire alarm rings, please leave the room and use the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point in the car park. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of those watching the meeting online, please would members and officers, when introduce themselves during the meeting, if not actually already introduced by name. Are there any apologies?
No apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 1, minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September 2026. Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Sorry, Malcolm.
Those of us that represent and live in the Phase 3 area, do we need to declare an interest as we're going to be discussing that in further on in the agenda? Just asking for propriety's sake.
I wouldn't have thought so.
I don't think so, Chairman.
You're on the receiving end.
Yes, everyone's on the same receiving end.
The only benefit you're going to get is a better service.
Oh, exactly. It goes with all of them. Right, well, thank you for that. Anyway, if any member sees they have an interest of some sort in our items, you can raise it as we deal with those items. Thank you. Item 3, public participation, there is none. So we'll go straight to item 4, which is the waste and recycling, the Phase 3 operational update. And Liz Mockridge, you're going to be batting this one, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, let me just share the presentation. So, my name is Liz Mockridge. I am the Service Manager for Waste and Transport. So what I want to do is just talk through initially some of our KPIs and our headlines, and then just do a brief update on where we are for Phase 3. So as we've gone through Phase 1 and 2, as a combined there's a phenomenal amount of work the team have achieved there. So at this stage, we've delivered in excess of 171,000 containers. Up until these figures are from about a week and a half ago, we'd made nearly 2.5 million collections under the new service. Phase 3 being on top of those figures. There's a phenomenal amount of queries that the teams have worked through. So 17,500 customer service waste-related queries. So those are the ones we've been able to isolate as waste. There may be some more mixed in with the other bits. And we've largely changed, obviously, how we collect. So highlighting that is the fact that we've collected 1,750 tonnes of food waste. At the moment, we're now up to about 80 tonnes a week. So that's 80 tonnes of food waste diverted from the refuse stream, which is phenomenal, really. And it's something that's beginning to impact our recycling rates, which we'll come back to in a little bit. But it's a phenomenal kind of participation from our residents there. So it's clearly a well-received service. And the residents are continuing to engage really, really well with that, and that's where we're getting those strong figures from, which is really positive. So phase 2 trends, looking back to phase 1 as well, any delayed collections were lower than phase 1. So this reflects the number of the lessons that we learnt in phase 1 and applied for phase 2. There's always room for improvement, and we continue to work on that, learning from phase 2 and applying those elements to phase 3. We've also seen lower complaint levels than there were in phase 1, and we continue to work on that to keep, as the letters go out and things like that, the volume of those complaints kind of reducing as we go forward. And one of the further kind of key benefit from lessons learned is food waste tonnages in phase 2 actually far higher than phase 1. In a way, slightly odd, and some of it will be covered by the demographics in that area being slightly different, but it's again building on that messaging and learning step by step as we go forwards. So KPI-wise, we just wanted to briefly revisit some of the phase 2 KPIs. So in phase 1, we had some challenges with delayed collections. As the rounds, we had some learning on the food waste and some of the others as we tried to bed down. So there was some large-scale review of how we delivered that in phase 1 and how we changed that for phase 2. And you see from there the number of delayed collections, though there are some, and inevitably there will be some in phase 3 as crews learn the rounds and adjust. They are far lower than they were in phase 1, and they continue to reduce. I should just add that there was a little peak just recently. This data will be influenced by things like breakdowns and conditions out on the road. So that will occasionally be reflected in these, and these are the collections that we go back to the next day, so the ones that we know that we've missed because of the way the rounds have worked on that day. As mentioned, our complaints, as we've covered in the complaints reviews elsewhere, are high because we have a service change, but relatively they're low. So we've changed 46,000 collections so far. And you can see there that we've had about 99 full complaints and we've got about 4 waiting response. So we're working through those as we speak, so those numbers will continue to be completed, but actually the number of complaints per 1,000 households has remained remarkably low for the volume of change that we're delivering. Looking at customer contact, we are looking at trends all the way through this, and this graph goes back all the way to the start of phase 1. So you can see that, again, applying those lessons learned from phase 1, the contact levels were much more manageable through phase 2. And what we've tried to do is just highlight where some of the peaks are and what's going on at the time. So one of the things in there that we've taken as a lesson from phase 2 that actually we're going to use to our advantage in phase 3 is there was a peak in contact exactly where we asked residents to contact us if there are any issues with bin deliveries. That's something that's really good for us because it shows that the residents have really picked up on that in the communications, and is something that we'll continue to just make that really clear messaging on going forwards, especially when, and again we'll cover it as we move to deliveries a little bit more. We're going to change quite how we do the deliveries on this and try and close down the areas in a slightly different way, which allows us to get those comms out earlier and get that messaging on people to try and encourage people in different closed off areas to contact us earlier if there's any missed bin deliveries during the bin delivery phase. And this graph highlights how effective it is if we get that messaging right. So I should just cover off, as one of the things I should just mention on this graph is this is all contact into the customer service team, so it's not just waste as you look at some of those call volumes. So as we've mentioned, the food waste tonnage is higher in phase 2 than phase 1. So this looks as a slightly odd graph, but what it is the kilograms of food waste per household. So we've used the kilograms per household because the phase 2 and phase 1 numbers are so different that it's quite difficult to ascertain what that collection rate is in the different areas without breaking it down by household. So the green line obviously goes a lot longer because the collection started earlier in that phase. And you can see in phase 1 that some of that messaging took a little bit of time to kick in on the food waste. And it does on phase 2 as well, but phase 2's got a much, much higher peak. Some of this will be the demographics, but some of it will also be, so when I say the demographics, there's a large proportion of families in the phase 2 areas, so you'll potentially see more food waste being produced. It kind of dips down quite a lot and begins to increase again, and we're just monitoring that increase at the moment, and we'll tailor the comms further on that, but we are anticipating that it does the same as phase 1, where it just begins to level off, though is currently sitting a little bit higher. So we'll continue to work on the kind of the education messaging on food waste minimisation. So behind the gate collections, in December, there was a report brought that covered this element off, and it went to Cabinet and full council, and we were able to get confirmation of the kind of permanent status of those behind the gate collections for food waste containers. It's working really very well. There's about 3,700 properties receiving those collections, and we are continuing to review that data set to make sure that data set is exactly correct. Because it is a new data set for the organisation. The GIS team did a fantastic job of creating a data set that we have never held before, and none of our partner organisations have. So actually there's a real benefit there for the national park, for the verderers, and for everybody else who kind of works in this area. Since, as it says there, since the implementation behind the gate collections, the reports of animals interacting with food waste is reduced by its 82% since its peak. So that figure is of all reports coming into the organisation and into our partner organisations. It's for all animals and all bin types. So it's a all-encompassing figure. So it's a really, really positive impact from those behind the gate collections. And again, we continue to work on this. We are seeing a few bits and bobs where residents are leaving food waste containers outside the gate, and we're picking up on those and going our crews are trying to report some of those, and then we're proactively trying to contact the residents. We know there's been some reports coming in through other routes of individual properties, and we're tackling those one at a time that are leaving the containers out. We are seeing some leaving all of their containers out, and again we'll continue to work with those, not just the food waste. We don't want containers left out permanently on the curbside, because that is where we're seeing more of the animal incursion reports. So there is one property on Sway Road, for example, where we've had the reports about 3 times, and none of the containers being interacted with are being interacted with on collection day. It just highlights the fact that some of these properties are leaving the containers out. But we are working on those, and we'll continue to do so going forwards. So, key lessons from phase 2 for phase 3. So, similar to what we did after phase 1, we have worked through a review with all our working groups, with our key partners, looking at issues we've had and how we've addressed those. And we're putting changes again in place for phase 3, so we're getting that continued improvement out of it. So one of the key areas for us on this was identified as our bin delivery contractor, so we're working with them. So in phase 1, we had a number of issues, and some of that was related to the lack of supervision there. There was a substantial improvement in their supervision between phase 1 and phase 2. There's still some challenges from that, and we've actually engaged with them, and we've got a plan of attack to ensure that we can make further improvements through closer tracking of deliveries compared to the vehicle loading. So one of the odd challenges we found in phase 2 was that there were reports of containers being delivered that hadn't been, but at a much larger volume than we were expecting. Phase 2 was a smaller rollout, so we should have expected a lower number of reports of it than in phase 1, but actually it was the opposite. So the delivery contractor have agreed to implement a number of measures, which will include cross-referencing, going to the minutiae of cross-referencing photos of the vehicle numbers going out, so the vehicle's fully loaded, and the tracking and sign-off using their in-cab units to ensure that all of those numbers marry up and there can't be unidentified deliveries going out at the wrong rate, because if they've signed off X number of properties, they should have lost X number of bins off the container, so they'll be much more proactively monitoring that. They will also be improving their reporting to us. So with their enhanced reporting, they're going to be creating a daily report to us that summarises any differences and how they're looking to address those. So it should make a real difference for us. We'll, of course, also have our enhanced monitoring going on. We also, as a learning point actually from phase 1, but there's a little bit of lag as we work through, had identified a bit of a challenge with the crew. So one of our supervisors had 62 direct reports staff-wise, and we've got a similar number at the other depots. So we've recruited a new supervisor, so that's a permanent supervisor, to help us manage that. The benefits to us come from it because we can do enhanced crew monitoring. We can more proactively manage the crews in the depots at the start of the day, end of the day, and just creep on top of those crew behaviours and standards. So that should make a big difference to us. So Luke, his name is, and he started with us in December. So no doubt you'll have contact with him as things go forward, as you do with the other supervisors. We've also, as a lesson from phase 2 to phase 3, seen what's worked really well, seen where we've got some more challenges and where people's strengths are within the team. Phase 3, we're going to adopt a temporary management structure. So this is redeployments within the current workforce, rather than anybody recruited in new for it. And what it's going to allow us to do is have a supervisor out of the Hardley depot, which is where phase 3 is being delivered from, who'll be running the business as usual service. That allows us to keep on top of all those standards and those staffing issues all the way through this without their attention being drawn onto service change, as we do have the business as usual, the collections every day to keep on going. The service supervisor from Ringwood, from phase 2, is going to come across to Hardley and lead on the service change element there. So he's very experienced and had a very successful rollout in phase 2. He's going to come across, support the team, and make sure we keep on top of it, and just to deploy all the kind of lessons learned we've got from that. We're also deploying a supervisor to look after bin deliveries. So this is a supervisor who's been already looking after our commercial services and clinical waste services and bin deliveries and things like that. He'll be really proactively managing our bin deliveries out of and bin deliveries into as well, Clay Meadow and other sites. So again, a real focused resource on that. And our senior management in that team, so our senior supervisor and operations manager, will again also be splitting their capacity much more between supervising the service change and business as usual. So again, really putting in place these lessons learned and really playing to people's strengths to make sure we can do the best we can in phase 3. So where we are on phase 3, we're continuing to move rapidly towards this at the moment. So we've done a lot of the work on the data set, so we've done again a lot of the scrutiny, comparing it with other corporate data sets to make sure it is as high quality data as we can going into this. We've used that to redesign the rounds. That work is currently finished and is sitting actually with the crews at the moment. So the supervisor's been through and made any changes they've recommended, and they're going through round by round with the crews, looking for any obvious issues that we might have going into it. So if there's anything we've missed, for example, on nurseries or schools that we want to avoid at particular times that haven't been part of the initial planning, and we're tweaking those as we go through over the next few weeks. We've also got letter 1. It should be hitting doorsteps between this week and next. So these letters started going out this Monday. So that's the initial letter to the residents in phase 3, and it will cover off what their container allocation is, if they're unhappy with that, what they can do to challenge that, and that's if they're unhappy with either sacks or bins and want to be on the others. It also gives them a little bit of information on the new service, especially on the food waste service that's coming. As part of that, the Waste Advisor team are all prepped to receive any kind of queries, any challenges on that, as are our customer service team. And then finally, just as a headline, a kind of heads up on where we are with the other elements. Over Christmas, we had the adverts out for the staff that we need for phase 2. Recruitment on this continues, so the adverts are now closed and we've got interviews tomorrow for this. Really positively, for the 10 jobs that we've got, we have 33 applications. So really pleased with that. We've got timescales for all the containers coming in, so from late February, all of these will start to arrive into Clay Meadow, Hardley and Queensway, and anywhere else basically we've got space because there's a lot of containers coming in for the 36,000 properties. Those container deliveries will continue all the way through March, with the last arriving in the first week of April. To deliver those out, deliveries will start on the 2nd of March. And this time round, there's going to be a joint JET and NFDC team doing that. So JET is our delivery contractor. So they're the delivery teams that have been working with us in phase 1 and 2. So we'll be working very closely with them, working in slightly different areas, but as a joint effort to deliver the containers out in as short a time span as we can. NFDC, as they've done in phase 1 and 2, will continue to also deliver the communal bins and the sacked properties. So there are about 170 sacked properties in phase 3. So we'll also do those at various stages. And as we get nearer, we'll give you kind of a bit more of a brief about exactly when those are going out in different waves. So that's me, Chairman.
Alan, you've got a question.
Councillor Glass, Hardley Holbury, North Blackfield. One question I've been asked by quite a lot of people is disabled people and very elderly people. Have we had many inquiries about help with moving their wheelie bins? Because I know several people are quite scared of it.
We have, so less so at the moment for phase 3, though there are a continuous number coming in, and we assess those as they come in. But yes, in phase 1 we had a large number, and I think we had a number of people in the later phases that requested that service early. It's going out in all our communications to just reiterate that message. So in the leaflets it refers to the assisted collections and how to request one. So the teams are geared up for that. But yeah, there are definitely requests coming through, and we're making sure we've got the resources and the instructions in for the crews in place to accommodate them.
Thank you. Malcolm, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I represent an area in phase 3. And first thing that's clear is that the original assessment by Keep Britain Tidy was at best flawed. The evidence of that has been in the first 2 phases, and there's evidence of that in phase 3. One of the bits on the presentation, you said council communication routes confirmed to continue through waste advisors. As local members, and I'm sure I probably speak for any local member around this table, we know our patches and we know the areas that where there will be a problem for this. And it would be probably beneficial to the process if you engage with local members to say, where do we think there are issues? I'm going to give you an example. There is a range of properties on Hive Marina, and this is just one of them, where there's no entry to the back, and they don't know any land from the front door out. So you can't put a wheelie bin on someone else's property, and it's not highway. Now, clearly, there needs to be this needs to be looked at, and I know this particular situation are engaging with the waste advisors, but that's somebody that's come to my attention. We can point them in the right direction. But I can think of other areas where this will be the case. And Alan mentioned about some of the elderly who generally are worried because they live on the side of a hill. How are they going to manage a full wheelie bin and take it down to the road? Clearly, they need an assisted collection. And I suspect in the hillier parts of Hive and Dibden, and it may well be the same in South Waterside, there will be a number of those that we need to address. But I would really suggest that the communication with the local members will help the process rather than be a hindrance, and will make it easier. And I know the existing supervisor at Hardley, who is very, very good, and he listens, and we've raised some issues with him early on in this process, and he addressed them. So it is a none, and he's spot on, that guy, he's really good. So I'm just suggesting this is a way to aid the process going forward, because phase 3 has got the most houses, and it's probably the largest number of people, and because it's we haven't got as many roaming animals, I'll give you that one, and because of the dynamics of the communities, that will present some problems, because we've got lots of small properties and small roads, and we've got some in Dibden Purley with no pavement, and there's a whole plethora of issues, and it really needs that engagement. Okay.
Thank you, Malcolm. All right, Liz?
Yep, absolutely. So just to come back to you on that, so one of the things that we've tried to do is well, if there are any concerns from councillors, they can raise them. We've not proactively gone out because we've got a process in place to allow the residents to contact us if they're concerned. So there is an appeals form online, and we do proactively, when we're writing to them, encourage them to contact us on it. There are a number of phase 3 residents that contacted us during phase 1, and we've already started to work through some of those with them. Hythe Marina is one of the ones that obviously has been raised directly already, yourself involved with that. And it's something that the team have gone out, and I think they're still continuing to look at the finer detail of. I think we've answered some of them, and we're still working through some of them. The assisted collections as well, we are aware that there are going to be pockets of them in places. But again, with the comms, we've got it going out to try and highlight it to people, and that is being quite well received, and we're seeing that from the peak that are coming in after the comms have gone out. On that as well, one of the things our crews are really, really good at is highlighting to us separately where they believe residents need assisted collections. So not the majority of the time, but a large chunk of the time, assisted collections are identified and added to the systems by the crews without the residents even probably realising what's going on, just to ensure that we've got that support in place, because the teams are really, really supportive of the residents. At the moment, we are funneling people through the website and through the customer service team, but any help that can be, any issues, any concerns from the councillors, any help that you can give us on that, we're always happy and very keen to take that up, and the Waste Advisor team is the route for that, and yeah, we can work through those.
Thank you for that. I only today posted the link to all of the web page across every social media thing I could get that I'm a member of. But the problem is there's a significant number of people who are not IT literate and don't get that communication. And they may well be in some of these properties that we need to look at, that's all. So it is good that we should be able to let you know.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Liz. I have a list. Peter, you're next.
I understood with your questions, so keep it pretty brief. Following up with what Councillor Williams said, I understood during the other phases you actually met with the councillors responsible. Did that happen? Because I heard that from the portfolio holder at one stage a while ago. Is that happening?
Where councillors have requested it, we can meet them on site. So I think we met teams out.
It wasn't just on site. I understood that you would probably have a meeting before it, with those councillors.
So
did that happen?
We do have a series of briefings. There has already been a briefing, and I need to come back to you on the date, but there was a briefing right before Christmas. We had 2 all-councillors briefings, a face-to-face one and an online one. Right. So we will continue to do that going forwards as well.
Well, that's good to know. On the big bins, when we spoke all this before, there was a delay on smaller bins and big bins. Where are we with that at the moment? So on the big bins, there is a continued challenge on that. We had a container that did not meet our standards arrive. We have finally had the lid replacements due on those, and they've also turned up to not meet our standards. So we're waiting on a further redelivery from the supplier, and then they're going to retrofit those containers. So at the moment I'm waiting on a date from those. The smaller bins, we have a delivery date which is midway through our bin deliveries, so not ideally timed there. So once we've got those containers, we're already looking at exactly how we can get them out as quick as we can, but because they're coming in at the time they are, that is a real issue with our resourcing. So we're currently looking at plans on that to then pick up that smaller bin delivery as soon as we can, but it may have to wait towards the end as we generate more capacity of the main bin delivery. So what we don't want it to do is impact the ability to deliver the full service to the new residents, the new phase 3 residents, when those in phase 1 and 2 at least have a container, even if we've got to go and change it out still.
That's good to know that we're going to have problems with that one. On the other thing, the cab reporting previously, this is when it was going back to Brockenhurst and all those issues going over there. The cab reporting were reporting on their system that collection happened at that point. And I understood that that was going to be changed on the cab reporting, that would have been seen by a resident until the collection actually had happened. Because that was the system was wrong on that, because their reporting had been done. And then it could be 3 or 4 days later that it was collected, that information was incorrect. Has that been corrected?
I think that was more likely down to the crews signing off the rounds in the wrong way. So that shouldn't be happening at all. They should only be signing off. It's a property-based system, and they can sign off either individual issues with properties or whole roads as complete. One of the early challenges when they were getting used to the kit was that some of the crews, if there was a road inaccessible, might report it as street complete, but say car blocking the road. And that meant that some of the wrong information was getting through. In reality, a resident who's using the portal to check their status of their collection would then see both messages, which could be quite confusing. And it also, by one of the reports, would allow people to report a miscollection when we already know that we've got to go back to that because we've got the inaccessible road or whatever the cause of it was. So what we have done through learnings from phase 1 and we've quite successfully done through phase 2 is we've got a in the workforce train the trainer who's going out with the crew. So he's a loader based out of Marsh Lane. He's really good with the system. His name's Sam. And he goes out and he if they've got any crews that are struggling to adjust to the system, he goes and trains them one-on-one out on the rounds. And because he's a loader, he's forming part of that team, so it doesn't impact our service delivery elsewhere. It doesn't fill a seat on a vehicle that means we're really slow on collections there. He's working as part of that team. And I don't, to my knowledge, think we have that problem anymore. So we didn't hear any reports of it during phase 2. So
certainly was happening with residents over in Brockenhurst, which I know my colleague will confer on that because it really was an issue just with normal residents on normal roads. So hopefully that doesn't happen again on that side of things. I think that's all for the moment, but I'm sure all of us will have questions as it goes along.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Liz. On my list next is Adam, please.
Good evening, Councillor Adam Parker, Brockenhurst and Denny Lodge. Thank you, Liz, for that excellent report. There was some very illuminating data in there about the scale of this whole operation and the positive changes that have been made. I'd like to wish James well in past is new, and I'd like to commend him, Chris Noble, yourself, Liz, the whole customer services and refuse collection team for their efforts. After a challenging summer, I think it's safe to say for me, and the protracted complaints that I received resulting from missed collections, donkey gates, etc., I'm pleased that the situation has markedly improved in Brockenhurst, so thank you for that. And the improved communications as well that I requested towards the end of the phase 1 rollout, I think really made a big difference, so thank you. Outliers and anomalies, which I think Malcolm touched on a bit there, continue to have some problems. I have to say it's not perfect, and I've got 2 pointers here that I'd like to raise. I'll summarise some quite detailed correspondence on this, which I'll share with you after the meeting. But basically, holiday-let business owners have not been receiving green waste collections despite paying for them. And I know of at least 2 named residents in Brockenhurst who are having problems here, and I think there are more. I was told, quote, "The only way holiday lets can be eligible for garden waste collection is with a change of policy through the councillors," end quote. So here I am asking for change perhaps on the behalf of my residents. Point number 2, Denny Lodge Parish Council has written to me to raise a formal concern regarding the revised collection scheme at Ipley Manor. It sounds like a familiar concern that I saw a number of times in Brockenhurst, where residents have flagged the long distances they would have to travel to collect bins from a collection point. In this case, it's some 300 metres, which seems pretty substantial. So a couple of outliers and anomalies there, and I hope we can find a resolution for them. Thank you.
So thank you for that. So on the manor, I think probably need to take out as a separate thing, so I'm not quite sure of the details there. Just to clarify on the holiday lets and businesses though, under the Environmental Protection Act, which is the core legislation that guides how we operate the services, holiday lets and other businesses aren't entitled to the domestic collections, which include our garden waste collection service. So that's kind of the core element of it. We don't offer a commercial garden waste service. So if we wanted to go that route, the council would need to decide to operate that commercial service, and we would need to design a service specifically for that element. But that would be why it can't be part of the domestic collections at the moment, just because it's effectively a completely different class of waste. Even though it's still garden waste, domestic and commercial streams are classed very much differently under the law.
I mean, I'm curious to know from other councillors, is there an appetite for that? And is this feasible to look into?
Not been raised to me. It's not been raised to me, Adam.
No. All right. Thank you, Adam. Okay. Thank you, Liz. Next, Stephanie, you have a question.
Thank you. Yes, I'm trying to be positive. I do still feel battered and bruised by the bag episode, as you well know. I would like to have it clarified to me, perhaps by email, the numbers that I can ring or the residents can ring, because, yes, they are finding it quite difficult to get online. And also people tell me that it's still a long wait to get through, whether, you know, listening to everyone else, it sounds as though it's rosy, but that's not what I'm hearing. Alan queried what JET was. Is that actually a contractor that NFDC are working with on the bins now?
Yes, so starting with JET, JET is the contractor we've got in place to do our bin deliveries. So they're completely separate to the bin supplier, and they've delivered over all 3 phases for us, or will have delivered over all 3 phases. So they are basically the largest provider of bin deliveries in the UK market at the moment.
It's not the actual collection service is being contracted out, just the bins being delivered?
Yes, so okay. We're absolutely an in-house service.
Yeah.
And
my residents, a lot of them have gravel driveways and quite a long way to drag these bins. So I'm guessing I'm going to come up against people who will find it's quite hard to bring these bins across it. Adam's probably got similar things. So I would like to be able to ask you about that if I do get that query come in, because I know all of my close neighbours have got that. Will we be able to ring this guy at Hardley, or is that just for county councillors?
No, it's not county council, it's a district.
Yep. Will we be able to ring the man if there's a problem with the bins?
So what we strongly encourage you to do is go through the waste advisors. One of the challenges with having the team set up as they are, they're going to be quite stretched on the specialist tasks, and a lot of the time they'll be out and about actually doing monitoring and things like that, so they won't necessarily be office-based at normal working hours, because they also start very early. The route, again, for yourselves, that's actually worked really well, I think, in phase 1 and 2, looking at the feedback we've got. If you go through the waste advisors, they'll often be able to answer things at first point of contact, or be able to make sure we're getting the message to exactly the right people who are doing things on a daily basis. And that just makes sure that...
People just ask, you know, they say, you know, with the old system, if someone's bin got forgotten for whatever reason, so it would always be collected probably by the end of that day. So I just, you know, wonder if that's going to return to that. And going back to food waste, education, I think I've said before, I mean, I know, I think people are feeling a bit of elation that it's actually being collected, but what education is going to happen, and can we have more details of what exactly are you saying? Because obviously we've got food waste coming from homes, supermarkets, schools, you know, there's food waste that we do know is being produced excessively, and people do need to know more about how to, you know, work with it. I know at Blackfield we've got Lucy's Place, where she's actually teaching people a bit more how to use everything in the fridge. And that's a person that I think I asked if we could have a meeting with yourself, and I don't know if it was James or Chris, but she was very keen to meet people and say, you know, there is another way rather than disposing of rubbish and the council's, you know, responsible for the cost of that, that we put it back to residents being more educated to cut down and know how to reuse. Yeah, we were going to ask if we could have a visit to the parish council, because our councillors are all obviously interested in knowing what else they can do to help people and how to report things. So if we could go on the list at Hythe and Dibden. And that's it, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. James.
Yeah, I think it's probably just helpful, if I may, just to remind all members and more widely that we do offer a whole range of briefings. We have met and offered briefings for parish councils, varied levels of attendance, I have to be honest, but we continue to offer those through the process. And I would just draw all members' attention. I know you probably don't choose to read emails that I send you if you don't have to, but the one that normally comes out entitled Waste and Recycling Service Update, most often on a Friday afternoon, is one of the most important emails I send, is the email that contains the latest on things like customer service performance, which is excellent at the moment, and provides you all the details and all the points of contact, provides you all the detail of what's going on. So even when I'm gone, I'm sure Chris and the team will continue that very helpful email coming out to you, but that is a real good source of information. And yeah, we really encourage members to use that, and you can then use that in your conversations with your residents, and you're as informed as you can possibly be as to the live situation as we know it. Okay.
James. Alan.
Thank you. I live in the middle of the Fawley parish, which is part of this new rollout. What would be handy, if we could have it, is copies of the actual leaflets that are going to go out, sent to each parish hall, so as they know what's happening, and to each councillor, including parish councillors, so as when people do come up and ask, because most people don't read the leaflets that fall through their door, we can just say, well, that's it, sort of thing. If that could be arranged, that would be a great help to us, and I'm certain enable us to answer an awful lot of questions, but simply enough so as the people can understand it. Thank you.
It's something we could definitely look at. I believe at the moment there are electronic versions that are put into the councillors' area, so they're accessible for you if you wanted to, well, even attach them to an email or to be able to show people. We can have a look at what opportunities there are on that.
Because it's the week they're going to go out and we haven't got any information on it yet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Sorry, Malcolm?
I've got a question, actually. I seem to remember in the original plan, the new bins were going to be delivered from January onwards, but now they've been delivered from March onwards. Could you just explain? Well, it's obvious they don't have enough bins or they'd be doing it, I suppose that's obvious. But are we sure that we're going to have enough by March from the supplier?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. We've put a lot of legwork into making sure that we have the assurance in place. So the core issue behind this is there was an issue with production at the supplier.
we've done quite a lot of work in the background to make sure that we're having detailed conversations with them, understanding the issue, understanding the impacts, and whether or not there will be any more impacts going forward. One of we've taken a number of steps with them. We do have it all in writing. We've got exact times, kind of literally delivery timescales of exactly how many lorries, how many containers are arriving each day. Yeah, there's been a lot of work to do that, to get that in place. And as part of that, we're doing contract variations with them as well to make sure that the organisation's got the protection it needs, as well as that additional layer of assurance. So we definitely have done the maths on making sure the containers are coming in. The rate they're coming in is quite phenomenal once they start. Hence part of the reason for our structure and having additional management support down at Clay Meadow, because of the sheer volume and activity going to be happening at that site over that window. But yes, there's definitely assurance, and we are confident that we will continue at that timescale, despite the containers being slightly delayed initially coming in, that there shouldn't be any further delays on that.
Thank you very much, Liz. A very comprehensive replies, very helpful to the members of the panel. I think it's a slowly emerging TIC VG as we progress and learn from the past and put it right. So thank you very much. Right, item 5, the corporate plan key performance data for Q2. And Sakib, you're in charge.
Thank you, Chair. Sakib Yassin, I'm the Performance and Insight Manager, and I'll be presenting the key performance indicators for Q2. This covers July to September 2025. So on the dashboard, measures IDs 16 through to 33 are for review today at Place and Sustainability Panel. In summary, data is presented for 30 of the KPIs overall, and 11 are marked for consideration this evening. And I would say that in summary, the planning measures performed very well again. They're above the local and government targets. Only one appeal was allowed of 217 decisions made over the same period. Kilograms of non-recycled waste, Q1 and Q2 data is now available and has been green rated over the last 4 quarters. I won't make specific comments about waste and fly tipping here, as there are some further insight details provided later in the report, but if there are any questions relating specifically to the dashboard, I'll take them now before we move on to waste and fly tipping. Thank you. Okay. Any questions? I'll move on then in that case.
Yes, please.
During the last Place and Sustainability panel, we were asked to review the extent of the reported fly tipping, and alongside fly tipping, we reviewed figures relating to garden waste. Specifically, we were asked to explore potential reasons for the observed decrease in participation in the chargeable waste service. One area of consideration is whether reduction may have been offset by residents choosing to dispose of green waste at Hampshire County Council-run civic amenity sites during the same period. So looking firstly at fly tipping, national data is only available for 2023-2024, and within that time frame there was an observed increase of 6.3% compared to the previous year. It's important to highlight that the data at that time that's published and available today doesn't really allow for any reliable assumptions regarding activity in subsequent years, so specifically 2024-25 and our current active year 25-26, for which we have local data. We've talked a lot about what constitutes fly tipping, so I've endeavoured to put the definition into the covering report, explaining that fly tipping is the illegal disposal of waste onto land or into water where such waste is not permitted. Therefore, any such impermissible disposal is technically classed as fly tipping. Now that may be anything from a stack of cardboard left on the ground at a bring site, and or something bigger, constituting a larger disposal of something, say, like construction waste. So we often identify these incidents of fly tipping ourselves, and we take great care to ensure that the clear-up is done and retrospectively, in some cases, recorded appropriately on our system. So that's something that the street scenes team tell me that they proactively go out and visit, go to these sites, identify waste, pick them up, clear them up, and add them to their systems. As I've said, fly tipping is often perceived to be large disposal of household items like house clearances or industrial waste like construction waste. And in fact, it can often be any type of impermissible disposal. Locations play a role in that. We consider fly tipping often to be something that happens overnight by commercial vehicles like tippers and in quiet rural locations. And just giving consideration to that disposal and the definition, it could in fact be anything from a large bag of waste not correctly disposed at one of our bring sites. There's been a lot of media coverage highlighting the growing problem of fly tipping across the country, and this really suggests that actually nationally we're seeing an increasing trend in fly tipping, and certainly a lot of media interest about fly tipping. We've seen locally that there's been a notable increase in incidents during the present year, and when we look at some of the combined data, we've seen a larger number of fly tipping incidents than we would have seen in previous years. So if we look at quarters 1 and 2 of this reporting year compared to previous year, there's been a significant increase. And while this KPI is associated with a defined target, it primarily serves as an indicator of activity in the districts and provides insight into the current situation. So we understand that we have control measures in place as a council, and we are actively trying to manage performance and making sure any incidents of fly tipping are cleared. There are other factors involved and behavioural factors that sometimes beyond our control. Nevertheless, it's an important measure that we wish to have sight of and present to the panel. So, as I've said, fly tipping is often first identified and resolved by our street scene teams, and they wish to express that they do not, in itself, the fact that they do the clear up in good time, record them perhaps before any member of the public has even seen them, doesn't reflect on a decline in service quality. The service would say that they have acted upon all incidents regardless of scale and location of incident, ensuring compliance and maintaining environmental standards. There is an increase in fly tipping at bring sites, and we were asked by panel to have a look at this, and I provided some information in the covering report that gives some details about fly tipping incidents at bring sites specifically. And for context, I've added a list of the examples of the type of waste that is fly tipped across 15 fly tip incidents recorded in December, to give you a flavour and a view of the type of material that would be picked up and cleared at a bring site. But each of these instances specifically being then recorded back on our systems as an incident of fly tipping. So I hope that provides a little bit of context as to the nature of fly tipping at our bring sites. Now, given some of the numbers that we've seen in previous years of fly tipping, it would have been absolutely counterintuitive to begin to set targets for anticipating an increasing trend in fly tipping, even where it was felt there was some anecdotal evidence suggesting that this might occur. Our targets are usually established using historical trends to provide benchmarks, looking at national figures as well, and are often based on the assumption that future patterns will broadly reflect what we've seen in the past. Locally, the recent rollout of the waste service, which you've heard about from Liz, is beginning to address some long-standing issues, we feel, and previously revealing previously hidden waste mismanagement, and including what's been mentioned today about trade waste and waste from holiday lets being disposed of within household collections of black sacks. So addressing these types of challenges, Liz has already described some of the education and enforcement activity that is going on to encourage the right behaviours from our residents, and that they understand the implications of fly tipping and what constitutes fly tipping. The service and the street scene teams, they are continuing to undertake early morning inspections of identified hotspot locations. All interventions are recorded retrospectively on our systems. Enforcement activity remains a priority. Additionally, enhanced signage is being deployed at bring sites to reinforce the messaging. So as we've seen, fly tipping has shown a significant increase, and it raised a question at last panel, but we've seen the types of activity that are being delivered to the service, and we are likely seeing evidence of previously mismanaged or unmanaged waste streams now having contributed to a rise in recorded incidents. But please be assured that addressing these challenges, we will continue to clear up where we can, and there are continued efforts in education, enforcement and behavioural change. Are there any comments before we move on to the section on chargeable waste?
Peter was first, please.
Councillor Peter Armstrong, thank you for that report. But one fly tip I mentioned last year, which was a member of the public was very upset about, had been there for a while, and they couldn't get to it for months because they had a certain vehicle which was not fit for service for a few months. And so that delayed this quite a big fly tip for quite a while. I actually had to go in and see a senior officer at Hardley because the officer, and I don't say this about officers very regularly, had not progressed it. So it rather throws the figures a bit when you hear something like that. But otherwise, you know, they've been very quick on the fly tipping. But if we've only got one vehicle that can actually pick up a large amount of waste, I'm a bit disappointed that we haven't got some sort of backup vehicle in those situations. So I wonder where that can be looked into, because if we've got fly tips where a vehicle's off the road for a couple of months, it doesn't help in clearing these things. Thank you.
To be noted, Sakib, I think. Next, Stephanie.
Yes, so I heard from a resident only last night that there's a car been dumped in the woods behind her garden, and it's been there since Christmas, but she was quite concerned the night before last because someone was there slashing the tyres. It's also full of rubbish, so I've referred her to the ACSO and the parish council as a start, but I'm wondering what the outcome's going to be, because we've always got to find out who is responsible for each bit of land. And then all along Roman Road in the woods there, we've just got fly tipping where, some was collected, some wasn't collected, then more was added to it. So I think when they see it, people add to it. This is what worries me. But I didn't quite know what to say about the car. It sounded a bit drastic, and it's also been there since before Christmas.
James.
Yeah, I think it's probably just being all members of the panel being aware when it comes to fly tipping incidents. The council is responsible for fly tipping on land in its control and ownership, and it can be really challenging, of course, when fly tipping occurs on private land. We know our colleagues at Forestry England have a substantial issue as well of managing this as an issue across their estate. So, it's challenging, it's frustrating, and no one wants to see it, particularly in a beautiful place like this.
Thank you. Next, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you very much for a very good, concise dashboard report, as you always do. I have a couple of fly tipping questions and a non-fly tipping question, okay? Deal with the fly tipping first. Now, forgive me if you said this and I didn't hear it. I want to ask the question, do you have indication of how much fly tipping there is in the New Forest geographical area that isn't on our own land, which we obviously record? Because we want to know, we really need, because the forest is full of a lot of people's lands, and we need to know the size of the problem that is in our area, because it is increasing.
I think we had that. I think we had that question at the last panel, and
yes,
and I think Chris Noble replied to that.
You've got to look into it.
Yeah. Well, I think he said where there are notifications made, even on private land, that we're aware of them, we do record them, but they of course could be dealt with by the appropriate landlord, and we wouldn't necessarily be aware of them.
Second question is then, has there been evidence that when we are more into the new waste rollout, that side waste which we won't collect, will become a potential flight bin issue. I don't know.
So we've got a process in place for issues with fly tip that does involve a bit of education from the waste teams. At the moment, the waste advisors are doing it. So to start at the start of it all, the crews report any side waste that they're not taking using the in-cab units. We're then passing that information on to the waste advisors and using a mixture of different methods. Sometimes it's a bit of a letter if they've not had some comms on it before, or it might be a visit if it's a particular repeat issue that we can see in quick succession. We're doing an education piece, and then we work in partnership with the enforcement team as well. So there's a mixture of education and enforcement on those elements. We are tracking where they come from. I say tracking, that's kind of the wrong terminology. We're looking at where they come from to make sure we've not got any particular trends. If there's a particular issue, we are putting some time and effort into focusing on it because we don't want it to become a fly tipping issue. At the moment, anecdotally, there's not any particular issues broadly. We know just from conversations with town and parish councils at lunchtime, post-Christmas there was, but one of the issues we saw at the curbside collections at Christmas is there was very low take-up of the additional waste sack we take on the first refuse collection after Christmas. But some of the parish councils, Ringwood being one of them, reported that they saw additional fly tipping of what appeared to be domestic waste in their litter bins. So again, we're going to take that as a learning point and just do some more education. Because of the low take-up, we don't think that message really got through, so it's something for us to learn from for next year. But that's been the only issue we've seen so far. Touch wood, it remains that way.
Big question then. I'm looking at the housing, and we've got a KPI, a percentage of homeless number of households and external emergency accommodation. The question is not about that, actually. Why don't we have the number of households in temporary accommodation as a KPI? Because that is a big financial draw on the council. Now, this might not be the question that you can answer. It might need to be directed to someone else. But I wondered if you could have a view on that, because that, to me, is something that we should be trying to reduce.
Sure. I mean, these are measures that we will be discussing in greater detail at the Housing and Communities panel. So if you like, I can take that question and have an answer prepared. I mean, generally speaking, we had agreed at the corporate plan, at the outset of the corporate plan, to have an agreed set of measures, and this was one of the measures that we had agreed at that time. So with external accommodation being an important factor, but we can provide directly some TA figures if you wish.
Alvin, you're next.
Thank you, Sack. 2 points, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
First one, thank you for a report that meets my ABC requirements, accuracy, brevity, clarity. It was all there, thank you very much for that. Number two, I think we've all learned over the last few months that leaving a waste bag next to on a bring site, if you don't put it in the skip, it's fly tipping. I think we've all learned that. So can we confirm that we're emptying the bring sites more frequently so that the instance of fly tipping of that sort of nature is reduced?
Of course, thank you. So I've had the pleasure of speaking with some of our street scenes teams and hear about the rigour that they apply in going out to these bring sites regularly. They're aware of the hotspots, they make frequent trips. I understand they go to some of these bring sites twice daily, expect to be able to have to clear some areas up. So this is something that they are very much aware of as part of the service, and they have planned their routes accordingly to be able to address any issues of fly tipping at bring sites promptly.
Thank you.
Right. Sorry, James.
Thank you. I just thought it would be helpful while you're bringing that to our attention, Sack, just to helpful message for the communities out there that bring sites are not household waste recycling sites, and when you see in the report some of the things that are being taken to household waste recycling sites, taken to our bring sites, 20 metres of carpet and underlay, a boat rudder. I mean, those kind of things, if you can't find an alternative reuse for them, they should be going to the household waste recycling centres run by our colleagues at the County Council as part of the waste system we operate within. And it wasn't that long ago that I recall lots of concern being raised in this chamber over the potential closure of some of those household waste recycling sites. If we are going to encourage them to remain open and active, we really need to be ensuring that waste is taken to the correct location, and that the universal waste service we offer for household refuse and household recycling is just for that purpose.
Thank you, James. Peter?
I just follow up on what James said. At the bring sites, I mean, I don't use a bring site, I use the household waste and whatever. What instructions have we got at the bring sites that is clear advice for people? What have we got?
So there is clear signage at the bring sites, and there are glass bins and there are bins for cardboard. Some of our sites have clothes recycling banks. They're really obvious what they are. The amount of times that I've seen substantial amounts of clothing just left at the side of those. Updated signage has gone in. There's also been steps taken to implement CCTV across some of our estate as well. So we can really, from an enforcement perspective, begin to clamp down on some of this as an issue.
Right. Anybody else? No, indeed. Saqib, thank you very much indeed. You do have a problem on your hands. I think the new waste system has created a lot of unknowns coming out the woodwork, and you're on the receiving end of it. So good luck with it as you go, but it's good to see the RAG is really quite, there's very few red cells in that, and that's a good sign of how you guys are working the system. Thank you very much indeed.
I do have a couple of words on the second question that was asked at last panel, if you'd like me to cover that.
Right.
Sorry. To go on a bit further. But at the last panel, we were also asked to examine the relationship between whether our decrease in households using our chargeable waste service was resulting in additional fly tipping incidents. And so we've tested that theory. And we understand also that this was one of the measures that had a bit of a stretch target. So it was always going to be a challenge to get households to sign up to our chargeable waste service. And the services provide us a lot of narrative within the dashboard itself. So we've seen that. The uptake has been slower, and evidence through the dashboard, slower than predicted, and two main reasons were cited in the reports. The service is saying that there's been a low growth period early in the season due to dry weather, with residents likely to delay sign up, and an increase in service cost and reduced marketing. So in addition, the service reviewed Hampshire County Council data on garden waste tonnages at New Forest sites. Curbside tonnages were also reduced over the same period, reflecting the growing conditions. So actually we've seen less garden waste being disposed of at Hampshire County Council sites and at curbside. So the number of fly tips involving garden waste materials is considered low and has fallen to 57 this year, down from 121 the previous year. So the analysis suggests that the garden waste has not been diverted to tips in greater quantities, nor are we seeing increased incidence of fly tipping of garden waste. This supports the view that the slower uptake is primarily due to seasonal growth patterns, with cost and marketing being a second factor. On both of these points, fly tipping and garden waste, complementary to the response today and the update from Liz, panel are also directed to the Cabinet reports of 3rd of September 25 and full council then on 15th of September. Those reports also offered a comprehensive overview of the service rollout, the issues identified at the time, the learning undertaken, and the mitigation and control measures that were implemented. And just finally, just to let everyone know, of course, that the Q2 dashboard will be presented to all three scrutiny panels. Thank you.
Thanks, Saqib. Right, moving on to item 6, portfolio holders' reports. First in line, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Geoffrey Blunden, portfolio holder for Environment and Sustainability. I think a lot has been said about the waste on the excellent report tonight. I'd just like to pick up a couple of things which was mentioned, and that was the local member engagement. And I think local members' knowledge of their areas is invaluable. And so I would stress, if you've got any, if you want to highlight any problems as we go forward, please do that through the Waste Advisor route so it can be picked up. The other thing on that is to, as James picked up, is to highlight the briefings that go out to members. And as we go forward into a more live of the phase 3, those briefings will go back to a weekly basis. They haven't been at the moment. And also we will be picking up again on the regular member briefings, and that will be either online or in this chamber to ensure that members are fully engaged with the process and can raise any issues. And I think that picks up also on questions that were raised at council last time, and it is important on that member engagement. On coastal, in December there were 2 separate cliff falls on the section of coast between Barton-on-Sea and Hordle. The second of these was more significant of the 2 and was actually filmed, and you may well have seen that on social media. The eroding cliffs are part of the character of the Christchurch Bay, and whilst it's not possible to predict precisely when large-scale failures will occur, obviously winter rainfalls are significantly increases the risk by adding weight, saturating the cliff, and reducing strength and cohesion. The likely triggers are recent fall of heavy rain combined with the ongoing sea erosion at the cliff base. Following the most recent fall, our coastal team have been attending the site to assess the situation. Visual assessments have been carried out by drone photography, which actually highlights the narrowness of the cliff-top path, which is sandwiched between the edge of the cliff and fenced private land. For safety reasons, about 650 metres of the cliff-top path from Barton Drive car park to Barton-on-Sea and by Barton Common and below remains closed. And visitors to our coastline, we do require awareness and vigilance, particularly in observing risk and adhering to signage and closures that are in place. Obviously, we hope to reopen those paths as soon as possible so that residents can enjoy the walk and the views. We've had a lot of instances, unfortunately, where members of the public have tended to climb over fences, but they are there for their own good. Update on open spaces and further to the commitments in our corporate plan, much as work is underway to maintain and improve our public space facilities. They include completion of the project to replace Langdown Bridge on an open space in Hythe to maintain the pedestrian access across this important piece of open space land connecting Hythe with Shaw Road Recreation Ground. There's also investment in Hythe Promenade, where repairs and improvement to maintain the safety of this walkway is well underway, and I understand it should be completed within the next few weeks. There will also be new environmental signage which is being designed for installation along our coastal routes and members and community groups will be invited to provide input to these designs for the signs. We've increased the resources to maintain the cleanliness of our 23 public conveniences, and the team have also been trialling a new cleaning projects which have had a positive impact on the cleanliness of these facilities, which will now be more widely used. And I know Councillor Reid particularly raised that point on products, so I hope that answers that question. Last one is on climate change, which I just want to pick up on, and we're investing over 40,000 in a pilot project designed to help local shops and pubs reduce energy use, lower bills, and adopt greener ways of working. And that is delivered in partnership with Inky Hive and EcoBoost New Forest. And it offers practical workshops to help those businesses, and those initiatives will provide practical support, including site visits to identify cost-saving measures such as improved insulation and energy-efficient equipment. Finally, the final meeting of the Climate Change Task and Emergency Group is due to be completed in early February, and I'm looking forward to sharing the outcomes at our next overview and scrutiny panel meeting in March. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, please.
Alvin.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that. Thank you for mentioning the cleaning products. My concern was one of the cleaning products were working, the public conveniences were clean, tidy and smelled fresh. But because there was no bleaching agent in the products, they were getting stained and they just looked awful. But it's nice to hear that they're looking at new ones, and they're going to roll forward with one with something that's going to clean them as well as clean all the stains as well as everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Anybody else? No? Thank you. Right, Derek, would you address the panel, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Derek Tipp, portfolio holder for planning and the economy. I'll start with the economy. There's quite a few activities taking place here. Village notice board, replacement of old and tired notice boards across the district is taking place. These were previously council owned and then passed to Go New Forest. Procurement is now complete and work to begin shortly. Update on business and community grants. £58.4 thousand on business grants and 50.1 on community have been awarded last summer in the window of at the 2nd to the 30th of June. 46 applications were received, 30 for community grants and 16 for business grants. All applications provided at least 10% match funding. Visits are currently being carried out and projects should be completed in March. Some projects will be selected as case studies for publication via reports to Council and an NFDC web pages, on NFDC web pages as well as social media channels. NEAT support, that's it, as you know, not in education, employment or training. NFDC currently delivers the Better Futures New Forest Enterprise project funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund in partnership with Youth Options and the New Forest Business Partnership. This is a 32-week programme supporting small groups of young people aged 16 to 25 through mentoring, enterprise training and work placements, aiming to build confidence and improve employability. The Economic Development Team is developing a project to establish a NEATS hub in the New Forest. This is modelled on a successful approach in Havant Borough Council. A Solent Freeport funded NEATS hub would complement and scale up existing provision in the New Forest. The hub would focus on wraparound support, including employer engagement, targeted employment, training advice, and practical guidance. The pilot project would accommodate up to 50 participants, targeting 60% progression into employment, education or training within 12 months. That's that item. Then next is, this year the Council is a sponsor of the New Forest Business Show. This is organised by the New Forest Business Partnership as an annual event that has been successfully held in previous years. This year's show will be a business-to-business exhibition with networking and catering areas. It will be held on Thursday the 18th of June at the New Forest Showground. The aim is to strengthen the local economy and provide growth and improve skills. Expected to have 100 exhibitors and 400 visitors. Obviously there'll be more on this as we approach the date. There are also free online workshops for small businesses being provided by the Council. And these are available on the website. If you look up business support and advice, you can find more about these initiatives. Business continuity and resilient workshops for small businesses. The Council is delivering practical workshops to help local small businesses strengthen resilience and continuity planning in the case of emergencies, for example, a power cut or water loss, fire or flood. And these sessions will provide actionable strategies to help prepare for and respond to disruptions, supporting long-term sustainability. There'll be 2-hour workshops plus networking and so on. These will take place in February and March. Now on to planning. The local plan, as you know, public consultation on indicative development sites was postponed due to it clashing with the government's consultation on LGR. The Cabinet will now consider and hopefully approve it to take place during February and March. During this period, there will be a series of drop-in events across the district. Dates and venues are being finalised, and you will all be given these as soon as they are ready. The cross-party members' working group will meet on Monday of next week to give member input. There'll be an opportunity for all members to have their input once the public consultation is over and officers have refined the plan as a result. Time to complete the local plan is very tight, as it is very important that it be submitted before the end of this year. If not, it will have to comply with a new and much revised set of regulations known as the NPPF, that is the National Planning Policy Framework. And there are a lot of these key changes, quite a lot going on. Major reforms to housing delivery, strategic planning, climate action, national decision-making policies are proposed alongside plan-making policies, creating a clear separation between the two. These NDMPs, as they're called, that's national decision-making policies, are non-statutory, but they carry significant weight. And if a local plan policy is inconsistent with one of these, it should be given very little weight. So take that as you will. Potential impacts of all this: higher housing targets, stronger presumption in favour of development, a review of green belt, including grey belt, an urgent need for renewable energy mapping to decide where it's best placed to put renewable energy. Plan-making changes, significant reforms to decision-taking and strategic planning. And our officers will prepare a full consultation response by the 10th of March this year. The Planning and Infrastructure Act, there's a lot of changes here. I'll just mention 3. It accelerates major infrastructure delivery by reforming the NSIP process, and consultations will be reduced, timeframes tightened up. Councils will be able to set planning application fees locally, which may be a good thing, unless you're putting in for an application. And that will replace nationally fixed rates to better recover the costs and fund service improvements. Planning committee members, as you probably already know, they must complete approved training to strengthen governance and decision-making quality. Yet another new tax on developers is coming in October this year, cleverly named the Building Safety Levy. It is, in fact, to build up a fund to deal with the cost of removing inflammable cladding like those on Grenfell Tower. And over 10 years, they want to raise about 3.4 billion from this. But it's going to mean an extra £2,000 to £4,000 on the cost of a dwelling. And that is going to be difficult for developers who have already purchased their land site. And therefore, they'll quite possibly be looking to reduce the number of affordable homes to recover this extra tax. And finally, Totton Regeneration. This project took another step forward today when the partnership agreed to go ahead with a public exhibition of the master plan to be held on the 30th of January at Totton and Ealing Cricket Club. And this will be followed by an online consultation for 2 weeks. And that's my report, Chairman.
Thank you, Derek. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. No, I think they're completely absorbed. I wish you luck for the next year, actually. Right. Item 7, the work programme is the last paper on your agendas. Our next meeting will be the 12th of March. It's already got 4 items in it. I see you're coming back, Saqib, so we look forward to that. But other than that, and 18th of June is the one after that. Right, item 8, I have no matters arising, therefore...
Wait. Peter's got something.
Oh, Peter.
Councillor Parker mentioned about trying to take waste away from commercial properties. I think both of us, from what we've said, would be interested. We do commercial waste, but not green waste. Is there a need for something like that? I know Councillor Glass said it could be expensive, but there are people who are going to be in need of something. It would be interesting for someone to do a very short sort of look at that, because with the way that we're dealing with waste and those people who were putting stuff in the waste who are renting properties and things like that would be classed as commercial. Is there something which we could charge for, which might be of interest to these people? Because we found more people, because of the way we're doing the waste now, across the whole of the New Forest, that it could be an income earner, potentially, but it may be too expensive. And I don't know whether it's possible for someone to, you know, not spend ages on it, but give a sort of, I don't know whether that's feasible. With everything else that's going on, we have to leave it after April.
Who wants to pick that one up? Liz or Jeff?
I am happy to. I would caution the capacity of the team to do the work at the time for the time being. It's potentially something we could pick up later in the year as a review on it. But yeah, it might be just something for later in the programming than in the immediate few months.
I understand that, but it could be potentially for the council with all these properties we're now finding. You're saying, you know, what do we do with it all? Councillor Parker's raised this in.
Jeff, you wanted to have a word?
Yeah, I take the point, but what I would say at the present time, it is not a high priority, and we are firmly concentrating on our core business, and really wouldn't want to expand that at the moment.
No, I'm not saying, because I understand the capacity, but it's maybe something up on the back burner to look at, because we could unearth quite a lot of commercial, in quotes, properties who are in need of a service.
We shall see. Thank you, Peter. Right, there isn't anything further to add to this meeting, so I now declare the meeting closed.